Welcome to another episode of the Let's Not Talk About Sex podcast. I'm your host, James King. And on this episode, I wanted to bring on a special guest, Emma Lee Allan, who is a sensuality and embodiment guide. And what she does is she helps women connect, with their body and really focus on getting their desires met and prioritizing their pleasure. And I came across some of her content just the other week, and it's really amazing to hear someone speaking up about this because there are a lot of women that really shut themselves down. And from my experience, it seems to be around a lot of like societal expectations. So I'm hoping that this episode is going to be really powerful for both my male and female listeners. So, Emma, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. It's an exciting thing to be doing.
Awesome. So, yeah, just to give like so the people listening can get a bit of an understanding of who you are and everything. Can you talk us through like what you do and a little bit of your journey into how you got into this, because it's not like a very common kind of field for someone to just like end up in.
No, that's right. For me, it was definitely a personal journey and experience that led to my own exploration. And once I fell into that myself, I really was drawn to bringing it, to sharing it with other women, because I believe that being connected with your body and your own desire and prioritizing your pleasure, it's a huge awakening as a woman when you do discover that for yourself. So ultimately, what led me to doing that, or discovering that for myself, was I was in a long-term relationship for 13 years. Eventually we had two children together, and that was early on in my life. So I didn't really know myself sexually. I was still having sex for the purpose of keeping a relationship alive rather than actually discovering my own pleasure in that and my capacity for pleasure as a woman. Because when we do start having sex as young teens, older teens, we do it for the affection of the opposite sex. And unfortunately, girls, it's not necessarily pleasurable every time. It's enjoyable because you're connecting with someone, but boys know that they're going to get off every single time. And it's a bit different for women, right?
Yeah, very much
And
so.
even into a long term relationship, as I wasn't that connected with my own body and aware of my own capacity for pleasure, I didn't necessarily strive for that myself. So I was still connected with my partner, but I didn't really know what I could actually experience in this life. And I believe that once I became a mother, I call it my goddess awakening. It's not an official term, but this is what I call it, because women, with our womb, it is our portal to the creation. And by having children and birthing children, that was awakened within me, and my body naturally started to yearn for more. And because I wasn't that connected with my body, I didn't know why I was feeling and having the thoughts that I was. So I started to really try and connect with my body, and I was drawn to sensuality and just feeling into myself and diving deep into my own emotions, why I was feeling that way, and seeking more of what I felt like or was yearning for. And it was a lot of, trial and error of different practices that I was learning from people in the space already. And through my own learnings, I did expand within my own pleasure. And I thought the simplest way to bring it to women was to share it with them in a safe container and just teach them simple daily practices. So giving themselves 15 minutes a day to connect with their body and fall in love with themselves visually, emotionally, and spiritually. Because ultimately, before we can genuinely connect with a man, we should really be connected with ourselves. Because a woman's pleasure is a huge gift that when we feel safe, we do give that to a man.
No, that is really powerful, and it's very similar to along the lines of what I get, my male clients to go through, which, as cliche as it sounds, it really is that self-love thing. It's like you can't expect another person to complete you. And it's like I've had experiences with women where, they've never been asked like what are their desires, how do they like to be pleasured, and they've never actually pleasured themselves due to, some kind of conditioning when they were growing up, like it's bad to touch yourself and all that. So you get into it and they're like, I have no idea what I even like, which becomes very difficult to connect with them or give them what they want because, they don't even know. So even with guys, I say like with masturbation, it's not just about your dick. It's about exploring all of your body and finding that pleasure. So something I want to sort of get your perspective on was something you mentioned just before, which was about like the women not advocating for themselves, especially when they're younger. Like they just sort of have sex for the sake of having sex because it's kind of expected. When was kind of that moment where you felt comfortable to kind of voice what your needs were? And how did you kind of go from like not being able to being able to, so the women listening can kind of maybe get a bit of advice on how they can start to open up more to a partner?
Well, for me, I discovered my orgasm at a very, very young age. Like I'm talking single digits. So I knew that my body could feel that. Obviously, at that age, I had no idea what it was. It was just, wow, what is this feeling? And I want to feel that more often. And then becoming a teenager, there's a lot of that good girl conditioning. That was definitely something that I had to break down for myself, was that it's okay to desire sex. It's not taboo.
Mhm,
It's not sin, as religion has brought into the society that it's sinful, and it's actually not.
mm,
Sexual energy and sex is one of the most divine things that we can do. And I didn't have a voice when it came to sex for many, many years. I didn't self pleasure with my own two hands that I was given and born with until I was easily, I think, about 32, 33.
wow,
Before then, I didn't think it was possible because I learned through external stimulation of other things. And it wasn't until after I left my long term relationship that I connected with a man who really created a safe space for me and was so open to taking his time with me, and to be honest, just absolutely adoring every part of my body. Like
mm,
he could not get enough, insatiable for me, and absolutely saw me for the beautiful creation goddess that I am. No matter what I look like, no matter, what scars were left behind from having children, he just made me feel absolutely beautiful. And that allowed me to drop into my body and out of my head wondering what he thought. I believe that is absolutely key, which is why I do the basic steps that I do with women so that they accept every part of themselves before they're even asking somebody else to do so. Because then, if they
mm.
don't feel safe in that space with a man, they can know that they completely love themselves. They think they're beautiful. And if he's not ready to recognize that, and he's not willing to evolve to step up and give that a go with her, then maybe he's just not the right partner for her at that moment.
Definitely. And it sounds like, something I'm always preaching is with sex, there is no goal, there is no destination. It's all about the journey. And it sounds like this is what this guy did for you, was like not only did he make you feel beautiful, but he didn't make it a goal-oriented thing. It's like, let's just explore and see what kind of happens. Is that kind of true?
Absolutely. We could get lost for hours
Yeah.
before he would ejaculate.
Mm.
So it was just pure pleasure and indulgent connection of each other.
And so what does that do? Like take away like, him making you feel beautiful, for instance, like if he just was giving you a lot of compliments. What does him just like taking that time and not worrying about the like orgasm or ejaculation for either of you? What does that do for you as a woman?
It allows me to know that no matter how long it takes for my body to kick in, to be ready to be touched, penetrated, it doesn't matter how long it takes. He's
Mm,
there to just spend time together, connect, and enjoy each other. And sometimes I know that there are people who have experienced trauma. So simply being touched on any part of their body can bring their walls up.
mm.
So it's that intimate connection, slowing down and having conversation and listening, I think is important.
Oh, definitely. And it's something that I really like prioritize with teaching my clients is like, because there are a lot of women that haven't gone through this journey of like self-love and self-acceptance. So it's like you have to step up even more as a man to make her feel comfortable so that she can get out of her head. So whether that's making her feel sexy, making her feel safe, and then allowing that time. Because a lot of the guys I get, they do spend like 5 minutes on foreplay and they're like, all right, let's go, let's jump in. And it's like, her body might not even be ready for penetration, let alone be ready for an orgasm. You mentioned earlier about like becoming in touch with your sexuality, and from going through your content, there's a really important message I think you have there, which is like how powerful that is. And in my experience and with the experience of my clients, it's like when they were like shutting down their sexual side, it was actually causing a lot of issues in every other area of life. And then it was like once they got that handled, now they're getting promotions, they're hitting like their mission and goals and all that. So can you touch a little bit on, what you've seen from your clients as well as like yourself from the change or the dramatic shift from not being in touch with your sexuality to being in touch with your sexuality?
It is very easy as women, whether we're partners, wives, mothers, to drop into the masculine, to just, shut off, get everything done that we need to do, housework, groceries, work, mothering. It's very easy just to get that done. And at the end of the day, be exhausted and not be concerned with giving back to ourselves, giving pleasure to ourselves, sharing connection with our partner. So I believe that when we do drop into that masculine and we're completely forgetting about the feminine side of things and the pleasure side of things, we do it in a zombie like fashion. We might be achieving, we might be doing the do, we might be being present, but we're not necessarily lit up in that moment. And by truly connecting with our pleasure and experiencing it in a way that is not just, oh, I just need to release, go and bump out an orgasm and get on with my day, but it's giving time to ourselves, being slow in that sexual pleasure. And then we find a deeper connection with ourselves. So then we yearn for more. It's a soul connection. I believe that once we start to drop into that connection with our soul, life shows us more. And so we see more for ourselves and we yearn more for ourselves. So we want to strive for more and we do better at what we want to do because we just have this natural yearning that comes from our sexual energy. Mm.
No, I love that. And I love what you're saying about how, being in touch with your sexual self, and doing that like self-pleasure practice actually connects you more deeply with your partner because there are a lot of people out there that believe that masturbation is cheating, whether it's male or female in the relationship. But it's like that little bit of like self-care, self-love, whatever it is, allows you to bring more into the relationship, whether it's a new thing you discover or just being like the brain chemicals, endorphins, oxytocin, all that gets released. It just creates that possibility of that deeper bond. And all the studies show that when you have sex, whether it's that morning or that day, you actually become more productive and you're actually like are happier and your entire mood shifts just from having good sex. So I guess like, did you ever have any kind of experiences with guys in the past, whether short-term, long-term relationships, where they kind of like shut down your sexuality, like whether it was that they didn't like you using toys or they didn't like you self-pleasuring or there was something else that they did that kind of like put you in this like little bit of a box?
Yes. Early on in my long-term relationship, I was shamed for self-pleasure. I hadn't even self-pleasured in that day, but I was shamed for it. And something in me, I didn't do it consciously, but something in me shut down that part of myself from him. It was as though if you can't accept the fact that I'm a sexual being and want to self-pleasure when you're at work, why should I share that part of myself with you? And it really, because I've always felt quite sexual, even though I had the good girl conditioning. I was very, wanting to have sex and loving the attention of boys as a teenager, but it was never explored further or more deeply in a relationship where really we should have been able to connect and really explore that with each other.
I love this because I've worked with guys where this is the thing is like when sometimes it was like when they were younger or like when they first got together, they were having like that really raw, passionate sex. And then it was like as the relationship went on, it actually got more and more like it went from like, passionate sex to just love making all the time. And it was like the man was unconsciously shutting down that like naughtiest side of her. And yet she's there, like being like, this is still a part of me. I'm yearning for this. And yet I can't get it because he can't accept me in this way, which is really interesting because a lot of guys will say, "Oh yeah, I really want this crazy sexual being, like nymphomaniac woman who just wants to have sex all the time," but then they're getting to a point where she doesn't feel safe to own that because of like the way that he might feel or think about her. So did that kind of did a shift end up happening in any of your long-term relationships that kind of unlocked a little bit more, or was that kind of what led to a bit of the downfall of those relationships?
In that instance, it was definitely eventually the downfall because I began to yearn for more. And we just didn't know how to get that connection back. And because it was such a long relationship, it became more of a friendship, and it's still very much a respectful friendship in that case. But for me, that sexual chemistry and energy was just gone,
Mm,
unfortunately. But I can say it's the little moments, like relationships since then, it's the little moments throughout the day that can really ignite that in a woman. And
mm,
most men go to work before their wife or partner, while she's getting ready in the morning, send her little messages, and they don't have to be sexual straight away, but consider women's language. It's, "Oh my
mm.
god, I can't get enough of your scent," or say he's going down on her, couple of hours later, it's like, "I can still taste your pussy in my beard," or whatever. I love it. For a woman to hear those kinds of things, although she might blush and she might be a bit shocked and, "Oh, don't say that," but ultimately, she wants to
Mm.
know that her scent and her essence is what
Mm.
you are yearning and desiring.
No, and this brings me down to one of the things that I've got a really big problem with in like with social media at the moment is a lot of these like toxic influences that are out there where they're like really pushing hardcore on man hate or women hate and all this kind of stuff. And it's like they'll say something like that is you can never send that to a woman because you're chasing her and like that's bad and it's like it's wrong like they're kind of making this out to be that it's wrong to let a woman know that she turns you on, that you desire her, but it's like deep down, at least in all my experience, a woman wants to know that. She wants to know that, she lights you up. And when you do it in the right way, that makes her more and more attracted to you. Because like this man, he's not afraid to express himself and like tell me he wants me. Whereas like I don't know from your experience if you've had relationships where it's like a guy doesn't give you that, and it's like it's not creating this like, oh, I'm not sure if he likes me, I'm gonna go more for him. Instead, it creates that like disconnect where it's like, well, I don't know how he feels about me. Like I don't know how I feel about him now anyway. Like it's kind of like lessening. Like have you had that kind of experience?
Yes, absolutely. Women naturally start to protect ourselves if we feel it's not reciprocal. And we romanticize life. We start to catch a little bit of feeling for someone and we start to imagine what that could be. And if we have a moment where that's taken away and we don't feel we're safe to feel like that, it'll start to shut down subconsciously. And it's not us being mean or wanting for that to happen. It's just a natural protection that we have.
Mhm,
And coming back to connection and desire with men and women, it's primal. And when a woman knows that you are so insatiable for her from a primal position, it gets her excited. There's a reason that women love reading saucy books, or they have the scenes in movies where he just takes her and ravishes her because he can't get enough.
mhm.
If we are wanting that from that person, it's absolutely welcome. We want to know that he just can't get enough of us, that our clothes have to be ripped off. But in that moment, we still want to be safe. We still want to know that he will only ever go as far as we want to give, and we'll take the time to make it enjoyable.
Yeah, it's about being like safe and respected. As long as a woman has like knows that, like, and that there's that trust, it's insane like how deep these experiences can go. Where I've had these experiences where in a long-term relationship, she has barely explored anything, even though those desires were there. But then because I've made her feel safe and very comfortable, she trusts me enough, she's completely opened up and done things she never thought was going to be possible or something like that. And one of my favorite things to say is ravishing, because there's just something about that where it's like that it is that primal need of like, I just can't keep my hands off you right now. I must have you. So it's like, guys listening, like when you go on like a date night with your partner and you have that flirtiness all throughout the date where you're building up. It's like as soon as you get in the door, like pinning her against the wall and just kissing her, biting her neck, and then just grabbing her hand and walking to the bedroom. Like that kind of leadership, a lot of the time a woman is looking for, and just be like, yes, fuck yeah. Now I don't have to think all the time. I can just, like you said, out of my head into my body and just enjoy. And I think that is so powerful. And a lot of guys do miss like how important that is. Or like you said before, the small things throughout the day. Like, when it's making breakfast, like a little squeeze of the ass, like a little cuddle, like not always making it sexual either. Like, just a kiss on the back of the neck, just those small, like intimate, connecting kind of experiences so that she knows you don't just see her as like a receptacle or like just to get off. It's like, no, here is a connection because a lot of the time a woman needs to feel, at least in my experience, a woman needs to feel like connected before she feels like sexual. Whereas men, like they want to feel, they need the sexual to feel connected. But it's like, as a man, just give a little bit first, make her feel safe, feel loved, and then she will give back like 10 times to 100 times more as long as you know, there is that respect and that love there.
Exactly. And I think a little point to make on what you've just said in long term relationships, but short term relationships too, especially when you live together for a man, I'm speaking to the men that are listening. If you see your partner, doing the dishes or stacking the dishwasher, putting some washing on, go past, touch her on the small of the back, in her ear, just say, "Thank you. I appreciate what you're doing.
Mm,
I appreciate you." Or even just like in the deepest voice, like, "Thanks, babe." It's like
mm,
those little things, she'll just go, "Oh, okay." And it's
mhm,
like I just got goosebumps thinking about that because for me personally, when I am into someone and I love someone, cooking for them is my way of showing love. And
mhm,
I don't like to cook, but when I'm cooking for someone that I love and appreciate, I want to do it and I want to feed them. It's the
mm,
same what like it's acts of service. And I think for men, understanding those 5 love languages is
ooh,
really powerful because although say if a man he's does acts of service for his wife, but his love language is acts of service. If he's then thanking her for those and she's getting appreciated for doing the things that are mundane or that she hates doing, it takes the pressure off having that, oh, why do I have to do this?
mm.
Because it creates that connection in the partnership that everything we're contributing in the household is contributing to the relationship.
Oh, definitely. And 100% understanding like what are your giving and your receivings and your partner's giving and receiving. Because I can't tell you, like, especially early on dating and stuff, the amount of times like I give acts of service as my love language, but then my partner not seeing that I'm trying to love her by doing these things, but her thing was words of affirmations. So, and my whole like thing, especially growing up, is actions speak louder than words. So I was always trying to show it, but she still needed to hear it. And I'm like, why aren't you seeing that I love you? But, you know, I'm just not speaking the right language to her. And so, yeah, understanding that. So it's like, you know, if, you know, she gives acts of service, but then needs affirmations, those thank yous are going to be so powerful to her. And then the other thing I try and tell guys all the time about is like, you know, a lot of them have this belief that, you know, they want to go to work. And then they want their wife to be like this submissive, like housewife kind of thing. But times have changed as well. If she's also going to work, you know, now she's working, she's an employee or a businesswoman, she's a mother, she's a teacher, she's a cleaner, cook, like she's got all these responsibilities and jobs. And unfortunately, a lot of guys aren't seeing this. All they're doing is going to work and coming home and then sitting in front of the TV. And it's like, and then they want to have sexy time later on and she's exhausted because she's been like 5 different roles today. It's like, dude, come on, like grow up a little bit, help her out. Like there, and you correct me if I'm wrong here, but for a woman, especially when she's got kids, there is nothing sexier than a man who is a good dad, you know, that can turn you on.
Mm, absolutely.
Yeah. And so I'm trying to tell them, like, you take over the homework or do something like, you know, working out, like, what jobs do you like? What do you not like? So it's like, you know, for instance, if you don't like cooking, but you will for someone you love, it's like, cool, that's a cool thing. So it's like, he doesn't have to necessarily do the cooking, but maybe you really hate doing the bins. So it's like that kind of thing where it's like, you know, understanding like how you can help each other out and like still creating this teamwork. It's not that, you know, you have a live-in like maid or a live-in slave, whatever it is. It's like, you know, understanding that. And I try and drill this into them so much. It's like, okay, you're doing all this, you expect all this from her, but what happens when she leaves you? When you're now broken up, you're now a single dad as well. So you got to like look after the kids. You now have to be teacher, cook, cleaner, you know, do all this stuff for yourself, plus go to work. So like, is it really so much more effort to do half an hour to an hour today rather than, you know, having to spend entire days doing this shit later? And it's like, people don't see it.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially men with kids, sometimes they're a little bit not ignorant, but they're just not aware that
Mhm.
all their children want is quality time. And depending on the age, like a toddler, they only need 15 minutes and they're off, they're happy. If you give them 15 minutes of your undivided attention just to do whatever they want, then they're stoked. For the rest of the day, they don't need it. And that time frame goes up a little with each age gap. They just want a little bit more. But mum is the nurturer. Dad is the fun, dad is the adventurer, dad is the one that, once the mum does the nurturing and the child rearing, dad's the one that's going to show them the world. And so creating that connection with your children in that home space, in that chaotic space of, from school time to bedtime, that can really empower not only the relationship of the mum and dad, but the children with the father. Then that enriches the life of the man too. So I think bringing awareness to a whole family connection is really important because ultimately, happy wife, happy life. It's such a simple cliche saying, but
Mm.
it really boils down to that. And then that's the whole family unit connected
Mm.
as one.
And I think the whole happy wife, happy life thing is I think so many people misconstrue what that actually means. So it's like this, and it's in one of the books. I can't remember which one, but this psychologist or psychiatrist, literally all these guys were coming in being like, but she says she wants something, can I bend over backwards and I just give her everything? But then we're always arguing and all this kind of stuff. It's like, and there's a conflict, and then I just give in and give up my way, and it's like I give up my boundaries and all that to make her happy. But it's like that isn't ultimately what a woman wants either. It's showing that, you don't have this self-respect, you can't hold your ground. So like when someone else disrespects you or challenges you, are you going to fold for them? And so a lot of the time it's not about just bending over or being a doormat. It's about being able to hold your ground in whatever relationship it is, and have that strong negotiation, or being able to set those standards and boundaries. And that's actually how you create that happiness, because there's more safety and trust in that. So yeah, like what's your kind of take on that? Because that's my take, but yeah, I'm curious on yours.
I do agree with you. And I believe, standards and boundaries, they are always evolving with a
Mm,
relationship. And for a relationship to truly evolve, coming back to that with your partner, it all comes down to having that quality time to communicate about your relationship, what your wants and desires are from that
mm,
relationship. And as people, especially women, we get to around that 30 years old age and we really start to evolve in who we are.
mm,
And if you're in a long term relationship, who you were when you first got together to now, it can be completely different people, but you're still following the rules and boundaries that you laid out when you were 20 years old. So, and I that does come back to pleasure too, because as the woman evolves, she starts to want more variety, more excitement, and it's a more mature way of connecting and sexually relating. And if she's not able to communicate with that with her partner, and he's not ready or willing to evolve with her, unfortunately, that can sometimes be the breakdown of any form of sexual intimacy in the home or even the relationship.
mm.
And then
There's
it
a that
becomes monotonous, it's just robotic sex. Nobody wants
Yeah.
that.
Oh, no, definitely, and that's really important because I've been in, like, a lot of, like, sex positive communities, and I hear a lot of the same thing, which is, like, a woman getting to about, between 30, 35. She's coming out of, like, a 5 to 7-year relationship, and now she is just trying everything she possibly can. She's, like, thrown herself in the deep end of, like, what's possible sexually, because she's had no idea on, what it was, and she felt so repressed in the relationship, and not because the guy was, like, putting her like, purposely saying, "You can't do this, we're never gonna do this stuff." It was just because they didn't know how to express themselves and all of that. So I think understanding that, the fact is a woman's sexual peak comes up in her 30s, like where she and my belief, and I wanna see like if this kind of rings true for you, is that when you kind of get to that point, it's like you stop caring so much about what people think and what society thinks, and you become a little bit more like selfish in the regards of like, well, I want to live my life on my terms, or like live life by my own pleasure. So why am I going to care what, my friends think, my boyfriend, husband, whatever thinks? I just want to, be me. Is that kind of what went through your mind?
Yes, I believe so. And I still have friends who haven't quite reached that expansion yet. So I can sit around with them and I can be thinking and expressing certain ways, and they will just be blown away with what I'm saying. And it breaks my heart because some women that I connect with, they get into their 50s and they've never had an orgasm without an external stimulation.
Right.
And that breaks my heart because it's like, what have you been doing all of your life? But until people know, or until people really connect with themselves and listen to their yearnings, they don't know.
No, and I met this one woman like a few years ago now, and it was like she's in a 5-year relationship, and on the first night she faked the orgasm. Yeah, yeah. So there was a woman who, yeah, she faked the orgasm the first night she was with a guy, and then she'd been with him now for 5 years, and it was like she still to this day has never had an orgasm from him, and I'm like, so it's so like important to be having these conversations and not be caught in the ego. And like you said, the relationship check-ins are so powerful because of that. Like, so you can like recalibrate what's going on. And it's like when your desires do open up, and I had this experience where it's like, what I thought I wanted in a relationship and what I thought I wanted in a partner when I was 18 has completely shifted in what I'm wanting a partner now. And it's like if you can't grow and evolve and have those conversations, it's like you're on a, I can't think of the word now, time, like not a timeline, but like a, yeah, expiry date.
Yeah, I agree. What I
Yeah.
thought I wanted from a relationship when I was 20 is completely different now.
Yeah, no, and I think that comes down to like that exploration of self as well. And it's like as long as you can bring a partner into that. So you said that, you with one of your long-term relationships, it was like you got to the point where you were just housemates, everything had kind of like, dropped off. Do you think there was any kind of like critical point where things could have been revived? And like and what kind of steps could you have taken at that critical point that could have improved things?
I believe potentially could have been revived if we spent time focusing on reconnecting as a couple. Because becoming parents together, you change. But also when you are there's no community around you to give you time alone as a couple, then
Mm,
you do lose that. And if it's something that you really want to fight for and save and expand on your relationship, then you need to put in the effort and the time and set time aside to do that. You can't just wait for, oh, we've got a spare 15 minutes, let's sit down and have a chat. No, you actually have to set aside time together to even just, say you take a day or a weekend away. The first few hours, you're still just going to be relaxing into that time. And then eventually you'll get comfortable with each other and relax into it and forget about home life, forget about work, all of that, and actually start communicating on a deeper level again.
definitely. And did you like when that critical point was there, were you aware of like what needed to happen but just wasn't happening? Or was that something at that time where it's like you just didn't know what you didn't know, and you were doing the best that you could with the information you had at the time, but if you had had this knowledge it would have changed everything?
Hindsight is a beautiful thing because in the
Hmm.
moment you don't really know and you're feeling a certain way, you're thinking things, you're changing and your wants and desires are changing, but you just think that that's just how it is and that's the end of it. But in hindsight, you probably could look at how you could have adapted and made those little adjustments to save things. Absolutely.
Mm. And did you like at that time kind of look at like external help at all from like a mentor, coach, like marriage counselor or relationship counselor or anything like that?
No, we didn't, purely because there were a few different things that happened that were ultimately deal breakers. It was just not there anymore in that regard. And for me personally, especially, it was time for me to move on.
No, fair.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm asking this kind of question is because the amount of like, especially men that come to me where it's like they're coming to me on the brink of divorce. It's like right at the end where it's like, oh, I ask them like, what have you tried? And they're like, oh, not much. I've read a book. And it's like, well, what did you action from that book? Oh, I read another book or whatever. And it's like preemptive is much better than reactive. So it's like a lot of the time, like if like you're saying, if you had had a lot of this knowledge and experience or had someone teach you this stuff like a couple years before this critical point, a lot of things could have either been avoided or never gotten that bad, it sounds like. And I try and push this like all the time is like, have this is the importance of having a mentor, someone who's either been there before or knows how to navigate this kind of stuff so that you don't have to, make the same mistakes and go through the same like terrible kind of journey that they've been through. So yeah, again, I just think it's really powerful, and it's like, especially like the women listening to this, coming and looking at your stuff, especially so that they can be empowered. Because like I was scrolling through your content, and you make so many good points about how to reconnect with your pleasure, how to be okay with being a sexual being and being a woman and, being attractive and, what you can do with that. Because I think a lot of people kind of demonize being attractive or like being able to like use that attraction in positive ways. What's been kind of, I guess, your journey with that, like accepting that these things are okay to do and then be like going just fully in and embodying that?
I mean, I'm not ignorant to the fact that I'm an attractive person, I'm an attractive woman, but it comes at a cost of feminine judgment, female judgment. Women are
Mhm.
often threatened when an attractive woman comes into their sphere, and especially once I was single, it became more apparent. So for me, it was a matter of understanding that yes, people might be threatened by my presence or by my attractiveness or by my sexuality because I've definitely become more overt with my sexuality because it's just a part of my being naturally. But I
Mm.
always make sure that I include women around me in that sexuality and I build them up because I know some people might not necessarily feel about themselves the way I feel about myself. And
Mhm.
that's some of the work that I do and some of the guidance that I give women to fall in love with who they are in the mirror every day and seeing those beautiful parts of themselves. So I'm really connected with bringing women up first and showing their partner, look at this goddess that you have with you. I've actually
Mm.
had this conversation with one of my best friends in that I hope to be able to work with couples one day to show and help men what their woman can be because they obviously see her in their own light. But when she's allowed to evolve and express herself and find herself sexy and find herself beautiful, she will show a completely different part of herself to him. And I think something that is innate within men is competition. So if they see that someone else finds their partner attractive, they're instantly more turned on by their partner. And even
Mhm.
if it's a woman, if I'm speaking with a couple, I'll flirt with the woman, not with the man, because the man will see that, oh, that chick's interested in my wife. And it
Mm.
kind of ignites something in them. And then you leave it be and you walk away and you just watch them connect. It's a very
Mm.
fascinating thing to experience.
Oh yeah, it's that whole pre-selection is so powerful. The same thing I've seen happen to men through women is like as soon as a woman expresses more interest in the man, now the wife or girlfriend is more attracted to him. It's like that thing of like always wanting what other people want as well. And I've heard some not so great stories, which we won't go into now, about like how some women act around that in terms of like they're actually purposely going for like trying to get men that are in relationships because of seeing that other people want him and they want and he wants her more and all this kind of very extremely competitive stuff. But I think that just also comes down to, the unhealed people that have like a level of trauma and all that. So they're like acting out in these certain ways. But you're right, it is just so powerful showing that there is desire for partners. And I do the exact same thing as you, but in the opposite, where it's like, I'm hoping that, when the guy levels up his abilities in the bedroom, he starts stepping up more as a man and all that, his wife and girlfriend are going to see, holy fuck, like who is this man that I get to be with? And it's a thing of like, you want to have a partner that they go to their family and their friends and they just brag about you. They're like, fuck, my partner is so amazing. This is all the things they do for me. And it's like, what a strong relationship that can be when both of them are acting in that way, where it's like they just want to tell everyone about they just how much love they have for their partner. I think it's truly, truly beautiful and powerful.
I agree. And something that I believe is super powerful and important is that sexual connection. You want to know that the part that they love most about you is what they can't talk about with their family and friends because you're so deeply
Mhm.
connected in that taboo secret side of yourselves that it doesn't matter what happens outside because at the end of it, you come back together.
It's that our little secret kind of stuff, and
Yeah,
that is, yeah, that little piece that no one gets to see except you. It's so attractive, so fucking hot. Like having that, and it creates that like us against the world kind of vibe, which is like you say, incredibly, incredibly powerful. So yeah, like this has just been an amazing episode. We'll probably have to do more in the future as well. But for the women or men that are listening to this, where can they find you? Like, how can the women work with you?
the best place to reach out to me is through Instagram, and that's Emily Allan, or one word, just EMMALEEALLAN. And just drop into my DMs, come and say hi, have a chat. Let's see where you're at, what you'd like to evolve and discover for yourself. I do have a free Facebook community for women only. So women can be plugged into that. They just have to let me know. And I just do basic practices and simple ways that they can ignite their desire in there. And I
Awesome.
share my different playlists like dark feminine playlists, sensuality, sensual movement playlists. Yeah, and some few little tips. I'm a woo woo girl, so I love astrology, numerology, human design, erotic blueprint, all the energetic stuff. That's all my jam. So, I share about that in there. And it's really just an evolution of what people want to see. I've actually just opened a new container this month there as well. So they can be added in there for all the stuff to be pretty much from the beginning and going through again.
Awesome. Well, there you go, ladies. Go follow her. Go check out the group. It sounds like there's a lot of really awesome content that can really not just help in a relationship, but just like all areas of life and getting you in touch with like, the person you want to be rather than, what is expected of you from like a societal point. And I think that is the power, like becoming fully authentic. I think is the goal. It should, like, as I say, should, but it's not an expectation. Be the goal of everyone. Is like being fully comfortable in your skin, who you are, what you want, and all of that. So Emma, it has been so great having you on. Thank you for jumping on and sharing. And like I said, I'd be very happy to do more episodes like this.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an honor.
Awesome. Thanks.